Hello, everybody. Randy Patterson here with Boomerosity. If you listen back to the soundtrack of our youth, I'm talking about going back into the 60s, 70s, thereabouts. There's a lot of songs we've heard, and a lot of times those songs are written by somebody that's not always in the spotlight. A big one that comes to my mind is one of my all time favorites, which is Good Time Charlie Got the Blues. And it's been recorded by everybody. Gosh, Elvis and Willie Nelson and Linda Ronstadt and so on and so forth. And so to find out who is behind that, you have to go into the deep notes of an album or a song. And in that particular case, that song and many, many others were written by Danny O'Keefe. And Danny O'Keefe has a new album out that is just beginning to get airplay and starting to get some traction in there, and it's called Circular Turns, and it's where he goes in and gets some of his maybe less covered songs and records them himself again, both in studio and live. And to think that he is a one-hit wonder, you'd be sadly mistaken. His work is still covered today by people like Miranda Lambert and people of that level. So see, this guy is very relevant because he is, and he's still creating new music. And he shares a little bit about that while we talk about this album. So I encourage you to give this chat a very close listen or watch, depending on where you're catching this from. And also ask that if you're watching this on YouTube, please not only like it, but if you would be so kind as to subscribe to our channel. It's not going to cost you anything, but it helps us out a lot. If you're listening to this on podcasts, please subscribe to our podcast because that too also helps us. And again, it shouldn't be costing you a thing. It just helps us out, and we would greatly appreciate it. And also, of course, if you really like it, just send the links to it to your friends and ask them to do the same. So without any further ado, here is my first interview with the legendary Danny O'Keefe. Until next time, this is Randy Patterson with Boomerosity. Take care. Hello, Danny.
Hi, Randy. How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you?
I'm great.
Good deal. Well, thank you for taking the time to meet with me. It's truly an honor to finally meet a man who's been behind a bunch of songs I've heard all through my life. It's an honor to meet you, my friend.
It's a nice backdrop you have there.
Oh, I thought you might like that. So I always ask people, I hope you don't mind missing a few album covers here. But So before we dive into your latest album, how is the post-pandemic world treating you? Are you seeing big differences in what's going on in your career world versus how it was before the lockdown?
Yeah, there's lots of differences. I mean, what were the most available gigs, were house concerts. And they've largely dried up. People are afraid to have a whole bunch of people come into their house that they may or may not know and, may or may not be vaccinated or, that's a very difficult thing. And that over the last few years, even, pre-pandemic, that was where all the performances were, not clubs anymore. And only rarely in concerts. And for me, that would be if I were opening up for someone. And,
right,
that's really not very available.
Right.
Well, there's a big difference. A lot of what we do now is done online.
Mm-hmm.
With Spotify and all the rest of the, play for free music services.
Yeah.
The music business has changed radically.
Yeah. What would you change about it if you were made music czar? What would you do to change all that?
What a question. Well, I'd make the pay rates better. When you're getting paid, 4,000th of a cent, per play. And the guys who run Spotify and Apple Music and all of the rest of them, they're making a lot of money. But and there was I don't even remember the exact statistic, but it was when Pharrell had Happy, which was the most played song in the world. I mean, it played everywhere. I mean, one of the biggest hits ever. And he made something like $11,000 or something.
Isn't
You
that
know,
crazy?
the streaming plays.
Yeah.
That's, I mean, the music business largely exists because of the creators.
Completely agree.
You keep cutting the legs off of all the creators, pretty soon they look for something else to do,
Mhm.
or they just grow out of the business. And the young guys who come in who are told this is good for your career, well, it might be if it made more gigs available, but there aren't
Yeah.
more gigs available. It's just we live in a post COVID economy, and COVID hasn't gone away either. So
Yeah, I agree.
yeah,
But it seems like what we have now with streaming is the merging of record sales and radio play, which was, the artist's bread and butter back in the day. But now both of those are pretty much gone away. And so that payment model really needs to be adjusted so that the artists and the songwriters and the labels, are all making, and whoever owns the publishing, all get their fair take. But I agree with you, man. It all seems, and these labels are doing these 360 deals with artists that are, I mean, artists can't even make money off of their own work anymore. It's just, it's tough. I don't see how you guys are doing it. And as a fan, I was telling somebody this just the other day, as a fan, I think I can speak for most fans, we like to see our artists that we love successful. We want to see them enjoy the fruits of their labor, make some money, because that inspires us. That inspires us to be better than we are today so that we too can enjoy the benefits of our labor, the fruits of our labor. And I hate seeing this model the way it is right now. I just think it's too punitive to guys like you.
Well, I mean, I'm at the end, so it doesn't, even make that much difference to me. But, if I was 25 or 26, coming up and I had a record that, or a song that was successful, I don't know how I would parlay that.
Yeah.
I mean, you could sort of promote your popularity, but there isn't that model doesn't exist that provides a real stream, a money stream for you. So going out there on the road and doing all the things that are absolute requirements of a career have become so much more difficult. It's the guys at Spotify are making plenty of money, but
and that's even out of this country, really, when it comes right down to it. I mean, they're foreign based and all that too. So it's not even staying in the country for the most part. So,
I mean, the bottom line ends up being that regardless of what happens, to your career, most of us got in it because we love playing music and we love writing songs or whatever. And we'll do that no matter what,
Yeah. Agreed. So tell me about this new album, man. It's, I love it. So
Great.
Tell me what the story behind it, how long it took you to put it together, things like that.
These are all songs on Circular Turns that were recorded from 2000 on. And a lot of the albums that the songs were on were marginally available. I mean, you might have been able to find them on my site. For the most part, they weren't available on Apple Music or, Spotify or, the streaming facilities. So, my friend Len Fico, who owns Sunset Boulevard Records, came up with a list and the enthusiasm, which was the biggest part of it, and wanted to put these out. And I was thrilled that, they would be not only in a collection, but available, generally, so people could hear this stuff, which most of them haven't ever heard. And we'll see, people enjoy it, but I'm very proud of it.
Compared to all your other work and the albums that they've wound up on, how does this one strike you? I mean, because this is you instead of, you know, I don't know, Elvis or Willie Nelson or somebody that's done your work before. I mean, you're kind of putting yourself out there, and you've done it before. But you know, how is this feeling to you compared to someone else doing your, you know, recording your work?
Well, you know, I mean, our own work is usually our favorite version, you know,
Mhm.
just because of ego. But you know, I'm
Nothing
thrilled
wrong with that.
that I had covers from all those people that I admire and did admire earlier in my career. So I mean, that's the icing on the cake. The song itself is the reward, as much as anything, you know. So I'm thrilled that, you know, people will hear some of these. They're not necessarily more obscure songs, but I mean, they just weren't generally available, and now they will be. So maybe it, you know, it broadens the beam of the spotlight a little bit more.
Well, your name has been associated with so many big names, and I mean, gosh, two that come to, well, I've mentioned two that come to mind. My personal favorite was Elvis, and I grew up listening to him. His was the first concert I ever went to as a kid, and then I say the first celebrity interview I ever did was Colonel Parker at that concert. So you know,
Uh,
that's where my roots kind of go to from the get go. But gosh, Willie Nelson and Bob Dylan. I mean, all, you know, big stalwarts of the genres that we all love, and you know, any of these that you've done, do you do you think, yeah, this is one that so and so should have done, and it would have been a mega hit that maybe someone else did or something like that? Anything on this album that kind of represents that kind of story?
oh, that's hard to say, you know. You know, because I mean, you always have a wish list of, you know, people that, you know, that you would have loved to heard do the song just because you either like the way they perform or their voice sounded like it would, you know, have been a natural for the song.
Mhm.
Um, but I mean, I don't really know. Um, I mean, I hope that somebody hears it now that it will get a little, you know, the songs will get a little bigger distribution. And maybe there will be a couple covers, and people will find original ways to redo the songs. I'd be thrilled for that.
That'd be cool. That'd
Yeah.
be cool. Which song, and you know, I say this to artists, I know you can't pick a favorite song because it's like picking your favorite child, and you, as fathers, we're really not supposed to do that. But, but what song off of this album would you point to and say, well, if you like how I do this one, you're really going to love the rest of the record?
Well, I mean, where I tend to go is songs that have that maybe are a little more complex or have a little more complex lyrical set.
Hmm.
I like Litany for that reason, and in that I'm the guy I wrote it with, Bill Braun, has been a you know, a friend forever. He was originally was a drummer for me um, back in the '70s, and then I discovered that he was you know, a really great uh, writer, and so I mean, he just started sending me pieces of music, and I would, you know, kind of reorder them. You know, well, here's the verse, here's the bridge, here's the chorus. Let's put it, you know, reassemble it, and then I would write to it. And those songs have been some of my favorites over the last, you know, 20 years or so. And Litany is like that, in that it, you know, it was something that allowed me to be maybe more complex with my lyrics.
Cool. I think that's one thing I'll say for sure. Among your other talents, something I love. I mean, I love rock and roll, but it's so repetitive, and there's not a lot of brain power behind it, in my opinion. Even though it moves us, you know, and it's hard to listen to rock and roll while driving, but but nothing turns me on more than a well written song lyrically. Something that just is so brilliantly said that it just hooks into you. Obviously, why they call it a hook, but just goes deeply into you and becomes a part of your persona, part of your emotions and all that kind of stuff. How do you tap into your muse? I mean, let me rephrase that. That's such a basic question. What do you find in when you tap into that innermost being of yours? Because to me, I think writing a song that comes from the heart has to be just incredibly vulnerable for the artist. It's a form of transparency, and and you can feel kind of naked when you're putting something out there for public consumption. Um, how do you deal with that? I would have a hard time exposing myself in that way. How do you deal with that? Because it's got to be pretty raw sometimes.
Well, but some of it's illusion, you know. I mean, you take the kernel, the core of the experience and the sentiment, and then you dress it up, and because it's a story.
Right.
And I mean, one of the greatest pieces of advice that I ever got was from a man who was my not so much my voice teacher, but he was a man who helped me develop uh, my voice, you know, physically, emotionally. A man named Warren Beridian.
Hmm.
And he said that part of the key to creation, in any kind of creation, but in writing, is ask a question. The question has all of the potential in it. And when you ask a question, you know, what was she wearing that day? Well, now you have that day, and you have her, and you have the description, potential description of what she was wearing and how she wore it. And I mean, that's how you fill out that story, but it begins with that question. The interrogative is a very powerful area in the brain, and that it potentiates so much in the thought process. So rather than starting with a declamatory sentence, you start with a question, and that opens up the whole potential of the story. And then you figure out how to play music to it.
Wow. Yeah. If I was writing a song, it probably wouldn't get much past Itsy Bitsy Spider or something like that, and play it
Well,
on one
you
chord.
ask the question of Itsy Bitsy Spider, you know, what was Itsy Bitsy Spider doing that day? Well, now you have that day, and you have Itsy Bitsy Spider, and you have the potential of a story that forms its own web.
Very cool. Maybe I should write with. I want to shift gears off the album for a moment because, one of my favorite songs by you, and I know you probably have been asked the question a million times, but I want to ask it because I want to hear it directly from you myself. Is, when you did, you did Good Time Charlie's Got the Blues, and so many people have done that. Gosh, can you share any stories behind either the writing of that song or the various people that have recorded it? Maybe some inside, behind the scenes type of stories involving that, because I mean, talking about an iconic song.
Right.
I mean, songwriters must want to kill to be able to write one great one like that, and you've written so many. But with that as an example, could you share something on that?
And I think, if not all, most songwriters would tell you the same thing, that the songs that become either iconic for you or the most important tend to be songs that happen very quickly. They kind of burst out of you. They're gifts.
Mm-hmm.
And your responsibility is to take that gift and get it down as well as you can, and figure out how to play it as well as you can. I wrote that song, Good Time Charlie's Got the Blues, in probably less than half an hour. And I probably had another verse that has been lost. Either it wasn't necessary or it made the song too long or whatever, And it was a very, the beginning of my career in a very hard time, financially and physically. I'd been in a bad motorcycle accident. I was married, had a young kid, and was working with a guy in Seattle by the name of Jerry Denon, who was a mentor and a great friend, who had been the guy that got the Kingsmen's Louie Louie up the chart. So he had some experience. So I mean, that's how I I started. And what I knew about that song, as soon as I had a sort of a concrete form, as soon as I really had the song, and when I played it for people, Jerry Dennon included, everybody thought it was a piece of business. And people who heard it tried to get it to other people. I think Nat Stuckey was the first guy that did a version of it. And I've been eating his pecan rolls ever since. And then, it grew. I mean, it was the song that I auditioned on the phone to Ahmed Ertegun with. And he thought it was a hit. And it was just a question of finding or creating the right version of it. And that's what we did with Arif Martin in Memphis with the Memphis Boys. And that was the hit version.
Wow. Very cool. Did you ever get them? I mean, I keep coming back to Elvis. I'm sorry, but I just got to know, did you ever meet the guy?
I never got to meet him.
Wow.
It was one of those early heroes, along with, Buddy Holly and Gene Vincent. And he played in Seattle. I lived in a little town called Wenatchee. So I got to see Little Richard and Gene Vincent, Fats Domino. But I was too young to drive, and so I couldn't get to Seattle to see Elvis, which my parents probably wouldn't have approved of anyway. But he was a big force. I mean, those early songs, Heartbreak Hotel, and all that Sun stuff was really powerful. People, hear it now and maybe think of it as kind of primitive, but it was really raw and powerful if you were a 13, 14-year-old kid. It was heady stuff.
Yeah, it was, for sure. Well, musically, what haven't you done yet that you hope to be able to do before you say, all right, I'm done, my career's done?
Oh, that's hard to say. I mean, as a writer or an artist, I mean, what you want is, greater reach and more acceptance, or appreciation of your work. That's the gold standard for you if you've done something right and creative, that people, give you feedback, tell you that, I love that. That's my favorite song or whatever, And so, I mean, I'm hoping that enough people will hear this, will hear Circular Turns, and they'll find their own favorites and give me some feedback. I mean, I'm not necessarily done writing. I have another album that I'm working on of all original material. They're all brand new songs that I'm just slowly putting it together. And I've got basics now, and I'll, keep working on it next year. And hopefully by next fall, I'll have it, ready to be packaged and put out. And we'll see what people think of all the new original material.
Well, you just answered my next question, but I'll add on to it. What else besides that do you have planned for the next, for say next 12 months, next year or so?
Well, I mean, I'm still entertaining a hope of going to Ireland, not necessarily to play, but just, I mean, I'm still 100% Irish. I'm the last O'Keefe in my line that is. So it's a, kind of a spiritual pilgrimage to, go back and see where all of my people came from, and just, feel the nature of, what is fundamentally me genetically. I mean, that's a powerful incentive. So I'm hoping to do that. I'm hoping that this record gets enough attention that there's an interest in having me go out and play. I mean, I love doing that. It's a hard time to play just because of all the health restrictions. I didn't get COVID, and I don't want to get COVID.
There you go. Yeah.
So I just keep taking my shots and keeping my fingers crossed.
Now, where are you located? Are you still up in the Northwest, or are you are? Okay.
I mean, on a little island near Seattle.
All right. Good deal. I've only been to Seattle one time on business years ago. It was in the tech business, but beautiful city. I'd love to go back and explore more of it. I only had about gosh, about 36 hours there. So I really didn't get to see anything much except a hotel room and a meeting room, and that was it. But somebody gave me the tour around, pointed out where Gates lived and all that kind of stuff. But I'd love to go out there and explore. And of course, there's a lot there, the Hendrix thing going on there and the museum and all that. So I would love to catch it.
Well,
So
it's beautiful country. I mean, you're an hour and a half from a beautiful mountain range, and you have the whole of the Salish Sea, the Puget Sound, to observe all the water and the critters in the water.
Yep.
It's still, I mean, it's home, but it's always been one of my favorite places, regardless.
I hear you. So just not to be meant to be a dark question, but you've been in the business a long time. You've written some great songs that are going to be part of, the soundtrack of my youth and some of my adulthood and all that for the rest of my life and my generation's life. So you've had an impact. And again, I want to thank you for all that. That's just, you've put a smile on my face many times, as well as my generation. So when your life's over and you're up at the great gig in the sky, to borrow a line from Pink Floyd, how do you hope to be remembered, and what do you hope your legacy is?
Well, I mean, the biggest gift is that, and reward, is that generations down the line, for instance, my grandson's generation, that they would, sort of rediscover me is that's the blessing. In the same way that I discovered, older artists, particularly Black bluesmen, that, were thrilling to me when I heard them. And they influenced my learning incredibly. Mississippi John Hurt or the Reverend Gary Davis, who I actually got to work for a week or so, to be his lead boy, and just to be able to to sit kind of literally at the feet of someone who played that beautifully and complexly. Even though you don't learn to do what they do, their influence is huge. Same way that Miles Davis is a huge influence. I couldn't play a note of any of Miles's pieces, but it's that feel, the color of the tonalities that produce that kind of resonance within you that makes you want to find something within yourself that feels that good. Possible.
Cool. Well, Danny, this has been a thrill. I want to talk to you when you get that next album out next year, but if there's anything between now and then that you want to help get the word out, I would be more than happy to help you do that. And I love what you've done. I love what you've done with this album, and I can't wait to hear the next one. And if I can get out your way, I'm hoping to be able to catch one of your gigs, because to me, it'd just be a thrill. So,
well, thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for taking the time, and please stay well and stay safe. Okay.
Thank you, Randy.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.